language is important so that we can communicate with each other and all that. Then stuff that we also know includes components of language. Do we remember our phonemes, morphemes, syntax, semantics, grammar? Do we remember these terms? No? Yes? Somi says yes. Varada and Ketki, no non-verbals from you all. Do you all want me to quickly go over these ones? Okay, fair enough. So when we talk of language, there are a few components of language. सबसे पहले what we have is, let's say, phoneme. ठीक है? A phoneme is a basic sound unit of a given language, and the different sounds that you hear, that is what we call a phoneme. Now, when different sounds are combined, okay, when different sounds or different phonemes are combined, they form a morpheme. Now, what is a morpheme? A morpheme is, let's say, the smallest unit of language that conveys some meaning, okay? Now, then we have semantics. Semantics would refer to the process by which we derive meaning from morphemes or words, okay? I repeat again, the smallest sound unit of language is a phoneme. When phonemes are combined to form words that make sense, we call it morphemes. Semantics, on the other hand, are when morphemes or words have a meaning attached to it. यहाँ तक sorted है सबको? People? Okay. After this, what we have next is syntax. Now, syntax would include the way in which words are organized into sentences, and a part of that would also include grammar. So, grammar is required to, organize sentences. It is required to understand the tense, so on and so forth. Now, as far as components of language go, we pretty much have all of these things. Now, the next thing that we're going to briefly look at includes theories of language acquisition. Now, some of these theories we are already aware of. Okay? I am sure we've all grown, I won't say interested, but I will say bored, studying the same theories of reinforcement and learning that Skinner gave us. Okay? The same logic is applied over here. So B.F. Skinner said that language learning is, or other language is predominantly learned. We remember behaviorism, right? So Skinner said that language is predominantly learned as a result of association, as a result of reinforcement, as a result of observing other people. And we learn language pretty much through imitation, reinforcement, shaping, so on and so forth, as pretty much any other learning theory would predict. But then came others. Okay, we will come to Noam Chomsky eventually. Like, you cannot study linguistics or anything related to language without taking Noam Chomsky into picture. But we will come to that in a short while. Before that, we've established what the learning theories were talking in terms of language acquisition. Everyone's understood this point? इनका कहना क्या है? इनका कहना सिर्फ इतना है that, like everything else, language also is learned as a result of association, as a result of observation, as a result of reinforcement. Makes sense? So language, according to behaviorists, was a learned thing. Then came others who were of the opinion that, boss, language cannot be entirely learned. Like, there has to be something which is beyond just learning through observation or through reinforcement or association. And one of the ideas that came with it is the theory of generativity. Now, please do not link this with generativity versus stagnation. No, we are not discussing psychosocial stages of development. When we talk of generativity in language acquisition theories, generativity is more in terms of creation. Generativity is more in terms of generating something or creating something, coming up with something. Simple example. Okay. Today, let's say, if you are talking about swimming in water, okay, you are talking about it to a friend, and you want to say the past tense of the word swimming. You know it is swam. Hayana. I assume everybody knows the past tense of swimming is swam. SWAM. Now, not testing your grammar over here, but assuming that this is established. Imagine एक छोटा बच्चा है. That बच्चा is, just beginning to learn English grammar in terms of present tense, past tense, future tense, whatever. ठीक है? Now, normally, let's say any other word. Let's say dim. Okay. Dim the lights. इसका past tense क्या होगा? Dim the lights नहीं होगा, right? Dimmed the lights होगा. Are you all with me? So, continuing the same logic, imagine a child who has learned dim is present and dimmed is past. That child applied the same logic to the swimming wala context and say swimmed instead of swam. Now, grammatically, the kid is wrong when the kid says, I swimmed yesterday. Grammatically, the word swimmed is wrong because there's no such word as swimmed in English. We say swam in past tense. But the theory of generativity says that small children tend to create such words and apply a logic. This is what the law of generativity says. I will repeat again. If you are writing this down, please write down. Generativity can be defined as the fact that speakers of a language can compose sentences. Speakers of a language can compose sentences to represent new ideas that they have never been exposed to before. Do we understand generativity in language acquisition?
तो अभी जा रही है तो पानी हम लोग भरेंगे ना धरो.
Now this is something that happens between like 18 months of age, मतलब ऐसे 1.5 to 5 years वाले age group के बीच में ये होता है. And why was the theory of generativity in language acquisition important? It was important because up तक behaviorists were dominating the scene and saying everything is learned through imitation, everything is learned through reinforcement. And then these folks came across and these folks came to the forefront and said कि the very fact that children just invent words, sometimes it's annoying, sometimes it's cute, but nonetheless, they just come up with inventing words because they are applying a system of rules. Like, what is the generic system of rule? अगर तुमने ed किसी को add कर दिया, if you add ed to something, it becomes past tense, right? They've applied that same system of rule, that same logic to this particular context, for example, like swimming. So, applying the system of rule was correct, but the word that they came up with was incorrect. Anyway, we understood why we say language is more generative than imitative, especially in this age. People? Now, an extension of the generativity is the theory of overgeneralization, जहाँ पे we say that children tend to extend language rules even to those words which are actually an exception to the rule. So things like swimming का past tense swam, this is an exception to the rule of adding ed to make it a past tense, right? So overgeneralization is an extension of a language rule to the exception as well. Are we clear with generativity and overgeneralization? People? Okay. Now, proceeding to Noam Chomsky. Now, I'm sure we are not new to Noam Chomsky. Noam Chomsky was the one who gave us the idea of universal grammar, who gave us the idea that, language is more nature-oriented, where he said that, he came up with the theory of language acquisition device, LAD. Language acquisition device basically is a theory which says that infants are genetically programmed to have a language acquisition device or a language acquisition mechanism in their brain, which once they grow up, once they are exposed to whatever speech that they hear, whatever stuff that they hear, they automatically acquire. They don't need to be taught, they don't need to be trained, they don't need to be reinforced, because they automatically have that genetic program which makes them equipped with the neurological construct to acquire language. Do we understand Noam Chomsky's take on language acquisition? He is simply talking of a genetic program, pre-program, जहां तुमको कुछ सिखाना विखाना नहीं है. The child already has a language acquisition device ingrained genetically. So as the child grows up, as the child is exposed to different kinds of speech, grammar, vocab, words, they automatically imbibe it. This is what Noam Chomsky was trying to tell us. Now, obviously, this is still quite debatable, because Chomsky did not just stop here. He went on one step ahead and differentiated between deep structure of an idea and surface structure of an idea. Now, this particular theory does make sense, where he said ki whatever I am talking about, for example, whatever I am discussing with you, are you going to remember exactly word to word whatever I am telling? Obviously not. But remember the gist of what I told you. Okay. So, when you remember everything expressed by the instructor, that is more like a deep structure of idea, which is not humanly possible because you cannot reproduce that. But you can certainly remember what I was trying to communicate. So, nonetheless, moral of the story is there is still a lot of debate on Chomsky's ideas of universal grammar and language acquisition device and all of that. But the chap is given due credit for forming cognitive theories and or biological explanations towards understanding language acquisition chalta kaise hai. There have been multiple theories. There have been multiple studies done on this. Some people have found proof. Some people have absolutely found no proof of universal grammar and language acquisition device. So this is, like I said, a very big debatable and a very controversial area. But nonetheless, ये एक है. Now, enforcing more on lines of reinforcement, they said कि language develops through reinforcement. Let me give you a very simple example of this. Now, I'm sure we've all seen small babies at home, maybe nieces, nephews, younger siblings, whatever. So if you've seen एकदम छोटे babies के साथ when somebody is talking, okay, be it the primary caregiver or whoever, when they're talking to infants, they tend to talk in a very animated way. Like, they will not talk normally like you and I are talking right now. They will talk a little karke. Suddenly they have ऐसे vivid expressions, tonality is different, voice is different. Why do you think they do that? For two reasons. Number one is the more expressions you have on your face, the more voice modalities you use, the more you are able to grab the child's attention. This is one reason. Second reason is you remember say naye parents of naye bacche, there is this kind of competition of what word the child says first, whether the child says mama or papa, ya dada ya dadi ya nana ya nani, whatever. There is this inherent competition between everybody. And if you see at that time, whoever is trying to tell the child XYZ, say mama, say papa, so every time the child responds, you are also smiling positively, no? And I don't think I need to tell you the impact of somebody responding positively to you. So that is where Skinner's reinforcement theory comes into picture. Ki every time somebody is trying to teach a word to the child, especially in the initial stages of language acquisition, सामने वाले का वो भत्तीसी वाला reaction देख के the kid is more motivated to do as told. Anyway, proceeding ahead, then there is one more language acquisition angle which speaks about social pragmatics. Social pragmatics is that line of thinking which says कि the reason why people tend to get so actively engaged in learning language is because boss you have a need to communicate. तुमको survive करना है तो तुमको communicate करने सीखना पड़ेगा. So in order to, let's say, connect with the social world, in order to belong to the social world, practically you need to learn the language, वरना difficult हो जाता है. So this is also one language. Then we have other theories like linguistic relativism, which says how we think or the kind of words that we use, the kind of language that we use also influences the kind of thoughts that we have. and this particular theory has also given a specific hypothesis called the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. Have you all heard about the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis? Now, the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis talks about a simple concept which says that the kind of language that we use will determine our thoughts. Now, this is not technically given, but if we are being broad about this and if we are trying to apply this language, if we are being broad about this and if we are trying to apply this logic, I would like to give you one linguistic example applicable to any multilingual person. All of us here at least speak at least 2 to 3 languages on an average, right? Now, despite us being multilingual, have you noticed that when you are too overwhelmed, either too emotional or too angry or too pissed off, whatever may be the thing, you will get sukoon giving galis in a certain language only. Correct me if I'm wrong. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you your preference for Hindi galis or English galis. But the point to note over here is that at the end of the day, no matter how many languages you know, जब तुम्हारा top floor खिसकता है, तब you will blurt out things that you are most comfortable in. And unless and until you do that, वो सुकून तुमको नहीं मिलेगा. How many of us agree? We do, right? Anyone disagrees? Sonal, have you raised your hand for agreeing or disagreeing? Agreeing. Okay. Fair enough. Now, ये होता है. And there are some words in some languages that you cannot literally translate. Like, you can find an explanation for it, but you can't literally translate. Let me take the simplest Hindi word, chugli. ठीक है? Now, when I say, मैंने इसका चुगली किया, versus when I say I complained about him or her, do you get that emotion? Do you get that vibe? नहीं. Right? Why? Because the word chugli is associated with a lot of things. Complain is just one part of it. Aag lagana is another. Wat lagana is another. Right? So all of these things are meanings associated with the word chugli. Are you getting what I'm saying? Yeah. So these are pretty much the things that we need to keep in mind when we talk of language acquisition. A quick recap. सबसे पहले we explored the behaviorism perspective, where we spoke about how language acquisition is predominantly happening as a result of learning. Then we looked at the theory of generativity, where we are focusing purely on how children or speakers of a language tend to compose sentences to represent ideas that they have never been exposed to before, like applying the system of rules. Remember the example for the past tense of swimming that I gave you. ठीक है? And ऐसे situation में, when somebody is extending a language rule to the exception of it, मतलब जहाँ पे जो rule apply नहीं करना चाहिए, वहाँ पे वो rule apply हो रहा है, that is what we call as over generalization. After this, we went on to understanding Noam Chomsky's theory of language acquisition. And Noam Chomsky is a very much nativist. If you understand what nativism is, they are talking more in terms of stuff being genetically programmed. So Noam Chomsky is a very big advocate of the idea that language is not a learned thing. Language is a thing that happens because we are genetically programmed to acquire language. And one of the examples that he gave, one of the theories that he hypothesized is universal grammar, which says that अपने brain में एक LAD है, language acquisition device, which underlies all human language. So according to this particular approach, जितने भी languages spoken around the world है, all of them के जो भी set of underlying procedures, set of underlying rules are automatically hardwired into our brain. So when you are born, you don't have to create those what do you say, connections. You are born with it. You just have to activate those which get activated when you hear speech every day, when you interact with people every day. यहाँ तक sorted है सबको? We understand Noam Chomsky's theories? People? Oh.
So, Noam Chomsky is basically saying that you don't need to learn only specific things, you just know it.
More in terms of, it's not like